First of all, let us say that the decisions that were made in the past, whether by my grandfather or by my father, were seen as decisions made by individual leaders. The people of RDA have now expressed their will to exercise their right to decide whether to remain in the north or go to the south. This was actually part of the Addis Ababa Agreement, as I said earlier, which was not honored. It is now part of this agreement, which is again not being honored, because the CPA created the RDA Boundaries Commission, and it said that the findings of the commission would be final and binding. And yet when they came up with their report, Khartoum rejected it and said these people had gone outside their mandate. Eventually, in the interest of bringing peace, and particularly after Abyei was attacked, just before the southern referendum, people decided to go back for arbitration, as we know. And I think the leadership in the south was wise not to react to the invasion of Abyei at that time by getting into war, because that would have totally undermined the independence of the south or even the referendum. The Hague Arbitration Award again said, determined the boundaries between the Abyei boundaries, and actually took away almost 1/3 of what the ABC, the Abyei Boundaries Commission, had identified as part of Abyei. Now, that was accepted by both sides, but when it came now to implementation, their new ideas came up, including General Grayson's idea that perhaps part of Abyei territory that had already been divided should also be ceded again to the Misiri, which of course is totally unacceptable. And as I said earlier, other conditions were given. I think we have to deal with the problem at different levels. The main concern of the Misiri is not land. As one Misiri told me, he said even though Abyei was depopulated, none of the Misiri went to settle in Abyei area. Their interest is not the Abyei land. Their interest is free access to water and grazings. And they fear that if Abyei joined the south, it would be a different country and perhaps their access would be impeded, is their fear. They have been assured over and over again that their access will not be impeded. Every agreement underscores that they will retain their traditional access to water and grass. So who is that interested? Who is so interested in more land and wanting more? I think it doesn't require much reflection to say it is what is in the land. Knowing that Abyei is now described very often, I think, erroneously, as the oil-rich area of Abyei. When you go to Abyei, you don't see any evidence of oil richness. But the Abyei oil is, of course, now going to Khartoum. And ironically, even though the Abyei Protocol, the CPA, gave the Misiri and Abyei each 2% of the oil produced from the area, that has never come. Never come. So, obviously, the people of Abyei are the victims of the conflict situation. Salva Kiir, the president of South Sudan, has always said, we don't want to go back to war on Abyei because we have agreements. What we have to do is to implement those agreements. But when you have one side constantly dishonoring those agreements, the question of whether Abyei could trigger a return to war or not is not always in the hands of the leadership. In 1983, when Abyei people despaired because the agreement did not honor their right, and they took up arms, well, they triggered a rebellion that spread southwards and eventually fed into the resumption of the war between North and South. So I think everyone recognizes that until Abyei's situation is resolved, Abyei will continue to be a potential source of conflict between the North and the South. And I don't agree with you that there are people who are saying well, since there might be one day a return to some kind of association, let us leave the issue of being unresolved for now. No. Because even in unity or in separation, the people who are being leave their Southerners. And that is their right to choose to go back to the South. And so you could say they are being kept against their will. And their land is being invaded and being taken over incrementally in clear violation of the rights. Unfortunately, there is no international community that can go in and impose a solution by military means. Intervention is not an easy thing to do. Usually countries intervene either because the state has collapsed and it's a vacuum, or the state is so weak you can just go and impose your will, or your national interests are so strong that it is worth the risk. But none of these would justify anybody going to liberate Abyei against Khartoum. And that is why people continue to try to find a solution that will be mutually acceptable, because there's no military solution other than a return to war, which you cannot rule out if conditions continue the way they are.